If you've never had a candied jalapeno, also known as cowboy candy, you are in for a spicy, sweet treat. And I'm going to show you how I make them here on the homestead, step by step. And they're super easy and so worth it. I don't know of anything you can buy in the store that compares to cowboy candy. It's great on hot dogs, hamburgers. Mix it in with cream cheese and spread it on a cracker. You can put it in other dips and mixes, and it's the juice, the brine from the candy that you make with the candied jalapeno is great for marinating steaks and roasts and so much more. And you can make all kinds of sauces and glazes out of it, and it gives it a sweet heat. You are going to love these. So you're going to want to start off with anywhere from 3 to 6 pounds of jalapenos. I have almost 6 pounds of jalapenos here. And you're going to want to wash them off and get ready to slice them up. Once you have your jalapenos washed, the next step is to slice them up. And you can use a food processor to do this if you like. Personally, I like to take the seeds and the pith out of my jalapenos because we don't like extra hot. But if you like it really hot, you can leave the seeds in and just slice them into rings. But what I do, as you can see here, is I slice it in two. I take out the seeds and the pith, and then I slice those halves into little, maybe 1/4 inch width slices. And that's what I'm going to use to make the candied jalapenos. And I have Mom helping me here. I'm taking the seeds out and she is slicing them up and putting them into a bowl. You're also going to need a couple of tablespoons or so of minced garlic. I usually go a little heavy on the garlic. It doesn't really matter how much you put. You can even leave it out if you want. But I usually mince up quite a few cloves to go into my cowboy candy. So once you get your garlic minced up, then go ahead and add that to the pot that we're going to be making our brine in. And I'm doing a double batch. So I'm going to be adding 8 cups of apple cider vinegar, but a single batch would be 4 cups. And this measuring cup holds 4 cups. So I'm going to do 2 of those to make 8 cups. Next, we're going to add some sugar. So for each 4 cups of vinegar, you will add 5 cups of sugar. And I'm doing a double batch, so I use 10 cups of sugar. Then next, we're going to add some spices, and here I'm adding celery seed. So you need a 1/2 teaspoon of celery seed for each batch. So I added a teaspoon since I'm doubling it. Then we are going to add some turmeric, and you will need about a tablespoon per each batch of brine that you're going to make of the turmeric. And then we're going to add some allspice. And the recipe just calls for a pinch of allspice, and I probably put about a 1/2 teaspoon into my double batch of brine. And then I also added, and this is optional, but I also added some whole allspice to the brine because I like the flavor that it gives, but you can leave those out if you don't have them. So then now we're going to give this a good stir, and then we'll be putting it on the stove. You want to bring your brine to a boil and let it boil anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes before we add the jalapenos. So just give it a good stir, let it come to a boil, and then set a timer for anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. And just a note here, I always bring my lids to a boil, so I've got those in a pot. I'm going to turn that on and let them come to a boil. I just think I get a better seal rate on my jars when I'm water bath canning if I boil my lids. And I'm giving the brine a good stir here. And sorry about the steam, but I wanted to show you I have my homemade rack in the bottom of my canner, and then I have this little piece of aluminum foil here on the edge of the pot, and that keeps the water from splattering out all around the lid while the stuff is in the canner boiling, and it helps the steam to just come out up under the oven hood. So the brine has begun to boil, and I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes, and we're going to let that boil for 10 minutes. And I just want to add in here to make sure you have a really deep pot when you are making your brine, and watch it very carefully because it does foam up when it starts to boil, and you'll probably have to turn the heat down to keep it from boiling over. You don't want this sugary mixture to boil over on your stove, so make sure you have a much deeper pot than what you actually need to boil this brine in. So after the 10 minutes is up that the brine has been boiling, then we are ready to go ahead and add our jalapenos to the mixture. So we're going to put the jalapenos into the mixture, and then we will let that come to a boil. And once that starts boiling again, we will set a timer for 4 minutes and let it boil for 4 minutes. And I had some bread rising in the oven, and it was time to go ahead and put that in to bake. So I'm taking that out of the oven and putting it in to bake. So once our jalapenos have boiled in the brine for about 4 minutes, we are ready to put them into our jars. And so I use a spider spoon, or you could use any kind of a slotted spoon that would let the brine drip off, and fill the jars as full as I can get them. And then I take this little wooden spoon here and kind of press it down a little bit because I want as many jalapenos in a jar as I can get. You don't have to pack them as tightly as I do, but you do want to pack them fairly tight, or you're going to end up with a lot of brine and not that many jalapenos. And the boiling the jalapenos in the brine before you put them in the jar also helps you get more into the jar. So I'm going to fill all my jars with the jalapenos. So once I get all the jalapenos into the jars, I'm ready to put the brine in the jar. And you want to fill the jars up to about 1/4 inch of a headspace, and you want to make sure you get out any air bubbles that are in the jars. And I usually just use a case knife and just run it down in the jar carefully and make sure I get out any air bubbles, and then add more brine if needed, which usually, a few bubbles come out and it'll hold a little more brine because we don't want air bubbles in our jars. And so right in the middle of me canning up the jalapenos, my bread was ready to come out of the oven, and I ended up with 3 beautiful loaves of sandwich bread. So once we get our brine and jalapenos in our jars, we want to take a paper towel with some white vinegar on it and wipe the rim of that jar off really good to get anything that may have gotten on there, whether it be the brine or the jalapenos. We don't want anything to be between that rim and our lid that we're going to put on our jar. And once we get them wiped off, then we can put our lids on. And I just use a jar lid lifter to get them out of the boiling water and put them on the jars. And then we're going to put our rings on finger tight. So once we get everything into the jars and our lids and rings on, we're going to put them into our water bath canner. You want to make sure your water is hot before you put your jars in, because you don't want it to take forever to heat up to a rolling boil. So we're going to bring these to a rolling boil, and then we're going to set a timer for 10 minutes. And you can see here I also jarred up the extra brine, and I'm also putting that into the canner. I just wanted to show you what a rolling boil looks like. You want to make sure the water is an inch above the top of your jars. So after the 10 minutes is up, you want to turn the heat off of the eye that the canner is on, and when the boil calms down, then you can remove your jars and place them on a towel, and you want to leave them there until they're completely cool, overnight or something, before you do anything to them. So I ended up with 3 pints of well-packed jalapenos and 1/2 pint, and I think about 5 or 6 pints of brine. I hope you enjoyed this video. God bless. Bye-bye.